Welcome back. All right, so I want to do a panic index. I did double check. I haven't done one in 4 weeks, and that's about the right amount of time. During the regular season, it'd be one every 2 weeks, but things don't seem to transition quite as quickly with the tournament setup we've got and the way things are set up. So it's once every about a month. Seems to work. And so you've got the very happy, the very panicked, everything is on fire, and this is the fans that are kind of sleepy because they're just waiting on the draft lottery. So, again, I don't pre-plan this. I just have all 32. That's right, I have 32 on there. I'm including Seattle in this one because we're getting close. We're only a couple of months away from Seattle having players and a coach and all this other wonderful stuff and being set for the fall. So, happy, panicked, kind of sleepy, and everything's on fire. All right, let's start things off with Colorado. I'm going to go ahead and say everything's pretty happy. I'm not going to put them right next to happy because the amount of players out of the lineup and then they had the back-to-back losses against St. Louis, I think things are still pretty positive for Colorado. But I'm not going to put them in the we're the greatest in the world category. Not just yet. But yeah, so I'll have them just below that. Just like 95% happy. So we can do it that way. But yeah, for Colorado, it's been cup or bust to a lot of prognosticators this year. I don't think that's changed. I don't think the regular season has caused anybody to change their predictions as of yet. We'll see if they change going into the playoffs. Next up, St. Louis. As we do not go in any kind of alphabetical or any kind of order, I've legit just randomized where I pick them. St. Louis, I'll leave them right about in the middle because losing streak, yep. They win a couple against Colorado, yep. Look like they probably end up finishing fourth, absolutely. What happens in the playoffs? So right now I have St. Louis right kind of in the middle between the panic and the happiness, and it really depends on the day. But those wins, the back-to-back wins over the Colorado Avalanche, and now they've got 5 against Minnesota, a team they've played pretty well against in the first 3 games. There's reason to be positive. There's also reason to be kind of hesitant. San Jose. For San Jose, I don't know that I put it into a panic region. I don't know that I necessarily put it into everything's on fire. For me, with San Jose, I think we're at a point where, yeah, we'll just wait till the expansion draft. I don't know that San Jose fans are necessarily surprised or all that upset with where they're at right now. I really don't think that they are. For Chicago. Chicago, really, I think I'll put them around the same level as St. Louis, and here's why. So for Chicago, there might be some in the fan base saying, "Well, we're not going to make the playoffs." So, we're waiting on the expansion draft, see who we lose. We're waiting on the draft lottery, see where we draft and how the draft works out. But on the Chicago front, when it comes to the Hawks, the fact that they're still in the hunt this late in the season has to be seen as a good surprise. And yet there may be some as well who are kind of sort of panicked about the fact that, this is a year where, they should be piling up draft picks and they should be thinking about the future and maybe there's a false sense of optimism. And so I'm going to leave them here, but I could understand why, if you're a Hawks fan, you might be up here, why you might be here, and why you might be down here. Totally understandable. Arizona. I think there's some panic for Arizona. I do. They're only 1 point behind St. Louis, but if you look at the fact that St. Louis has the 3 games in hand, and for Arizona, it looks like it's another year that they're going to be close but not quite good enough. And so with a team that does have cap issues going forward and all these other things that happen around the organization, I would think you'd have a reasonable reason to feel somewhat panicked right now. Not full-on panicked, certainly, but somewhat panicked, sure. Next on the board, Columbus. I'll put Columbus down at the panic end. Now, there are those who will say we're waiting for the draft lottery. Absolutely, yes. But what's going on with Columbus will affect next season as well. Whether it's the Line A negotiations and whether or not they hold on to Line A. What happens with Tortorella? So let's just say, fine, they move Tortorella out. Who replaces him? Do you end up seeing basically a hire of coach that's well known like a Bruce Boudreau? Do you see them bring in somebody brand new? Do you see them go in the direction of a full-on rebuild, or do you see them trying to go out into free agency, pick up a couple of pieces, maybe trade off a goaltender, and try to make themselves better next year? There are a lot of unknowns right now for Columbus, and so yeah, I see them as being kind of sort of panicked, because this could end up being a long-term issue if it's not handled properly. Next up, Minnesota. Minnesota has to be pretty happy right now. And Minnesota, too, the happiness is going to come from Kaprizov. And yeah, he's 24 and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's his first year. He's an electrifying talent. He is capable of single-handedly making Minnesota a far more enjoyable team to watch than they were last season. And I've said it before, I think that's the most enjoyable player they've had to watch since Marian Gaborik. Gaborik was a special talent who was a lot of fun to watch play the game, and he was fast, and he was very smart with the puck, and I get those same feelings with Kaprizov. And so Minnesota, I think, has good reason to be happy, even if the expansion draft and even if the playoffs and everything don't end up going their way. So, Seattle, where do they go? Well, Seattle's got to be happy, right? Seattle, they're going to be picking their coach. They're going to be getting their team pretty quick here. I would think that if you are looking forward to the team coming into Seattle and what you're going to get, this has got to be a pretty exciting time. And I think the city's kind of excited about it. Definitely seen enough articles on it to know that the media seems to be excited about it. Pretty good time to be a fan of a team before they've officially got players. Expect there to be a lot of complaints about who they do or don't take in the expansion draft. That's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking when it comes to who they do or don't take from a lot of hockey pundits all over. And a lot of, well, why wouldn't they take this? That's ridiculous. They should have taken this guy. And, we'll just have to trust Ron Francis knows what he's doing. Next one up is Winnipeg. These logos are all upside down. So in some cases, like with round ones, like Winnipeg, no idea. Winnipeg, I'm going to put them leaning more towards the Panik side. This 4-game losing streak, it's exposed what the advanced stats people were saying early in the season, which was that Winnipeg wasn't really that good of a team. They were just getting really good goaltending, and that Connor Hellebuck and Laurent Brossoit were covering for what was a mediocre team. And so what we've seen over the last 4 games is what happens when Hellebuck isn't a world beater, and he's still a good goaltender, but he's not the world beater goaltender. Then Winnipeg tends to lose some games. There are some fundamental flaws here. So I do think that what's going on with Winnipeg, there's reason to not necessarily be completely panicked, but at least to be more towards panic than the happiness side of things. Washington. Washington I'll put right here with Colorado and Minnesota. They're still first in the division. They've had some ups and downs along the way, sure, but they're still first in the division. They've been winning games when Ovechkin's been out of the lineup. Both Vanacek and Samsonov at times this year have looked very good. They've looked like rookies at times. Samsonov's technically in his sophomore year, but you guys know what I mean. It's one of those years where, the Capitals have done quite well, and we'll just find out in the playoffs how this is all going to turn out for them. Next up, Vegas. Vegas right now, that 9-game winning streak. Yeah, you can't touch Vegas right now. 9-game winning streak. This is an absolutely fantastic run the team's been on. And this is a team that could end up winning the President's Trophy. We can have the conversation about the President's Trophy when the season's over, especially if they end up breaking the curse and actually end up winning the Cup. But either way, having home ice through the entire playoffs is not a bad thing, especially when you have an excellent record at home, which the Vegas Golden Knights do. So we'll see how that turns out for them. Tampa. Tampa, I think there's got to be a lot of happiness with, because honestly, even though they've had some rough weeks lately, and again, whether it's because they're just biding their time until the playoffs, whether there are injuries obviously of note of Stamkos and Kucherov, and maybe that's been affecting some of the results as well. Reality is, I think things are still pretty good in Tampa. There's no reason to panic, no reason to worry, and their fans should be pretty content with how things have gone. Montreal, depends on the day. I'm going to put them with St. Louis and Chicago. Look, again, it depends on the day. If Montreal goes out there tonight and Toronto whoops them 7-1 or 7-2, there's going to be a lot of discussions about how Montreal's a mess. if the opposite happens, if Montreal goes out there and whoops Toronto, then the conversation becomes, well, Toronto's never going to win the cup. Look what happened against Montreal. It can get kind of exhausting, the day-to-day, and how quickly that opinion can get swapped. But I do expect Montreal fans to be happy with the fact that the team made the playoffs this year. And I do expect them to. I don't expect Calgary or Vancouver to catch them. So, yeah, no reason to be overly panicked, but I do understand not necessarily being all that happy, because without Gallagher, they're clearly a different team without Brendan Gallagher. And while we can discuss whether or not Carey Price is overpaid or whatever, the reality is the team's different with Price in the lineup, and playoffs Carey Price can be kind of scary to deal with. Anaheim. Well, I'm going to have them right here as waiting for the draft lottery. We knew this year was going to be rough. Maybe it's been a bit rougher than some might have expected. And maybe it got worse because at times this year Anaheim looked like they might be figuring things out, and then they'd fall right back off the wagon again. But Drysdale's developing. Zegras has put up very, very good totals in the AHL. There's a lot of reasons to look at Anaheim right now and say this is a team that's going to be in contention for a playoff spot. Maybe not this coming season, but the year after. And again, if they get the number 1 pick in this year's draft, that's just gravy for them. Next up, Vancouver. Depends on the day with Vancouver, but I'm going to go ahead and put them here. I'm going to put them there because they've got 5 games in the next 7 days. They really don't get days off. If it's a day off, it's because they play tomorrow. That's the reality from now until the end of the season. And it's a brutal stretch. And there are a lot of concerns about, the future growth of the team. There's concerns about Pettersson. What's going on with Pettersson? Is he going to come back before the end of the year? And if he doesn't, is this something that's going to affect him into the fall? And what's going to happen with the salary cap? And why did they get rid of Gaudette? And why is Chicago healthy scratching him? Is he maybe overrated by Canucks fans? We'll never know. But, the Canucks right now are definitely a team that we will keep an eye on throughout the summer, because they are usually a team that's interesting to watch, and not always because of good reasons. Very often because things are kind of falling apart, because it's kind of what Vancouver's been known to do. Next up, Toronto. So for Toronto right now I'll put them here. So after the back-to-back losses to Vancouver, probably would have been right down to the bottom of the Panik. And with Toronto, which period is it in? So I said with Montreal, it might be game by game. With Toronto, it could be period by period. We're leading 3-0 after the first. Yay, Toronto's the greatest. Oh, it's 3-3 after 2. We suck. Why didn't we stop those goals? It's 5-5 going into overtime. Why did we allow 5 goals? You win on the first shift of overtime. We're the greatest. Austin Matthews with the hat trick. We're the greatest. We're going to win the Stanley Cup. Yeah, so shift by shift it can change with Toronto, but I do put them towards the happy side because they're going to finish first in the division. They're going to finish first in the North. Fans have to be happy with that, right? Right? Kind of, sort of, maybe? At least a little bit? Somewhat? Philly. I'm going to put Philly down here with Vancouver, and this is a team that they're up, they're down, they're up, they need to find a consistent formula to win. They haven't found that yet, and there's got to be some concern with, so this year for Carter Hart, is it telling us how things are going to work from here? Is Hart going to be able to get it back together? Are the Flyers going to be able to get it back together? What's going to happen with Philly? I have no idea. So, while they're definitely a team that had a great year last year, and I think that's probably closer to reality than what we've seen so far this year, and it's been the group of death they've been stuck with, so that doesn't help the record. I have no idea what to expect from them next year. I'll predict they make the playoffs because they make the playoffs every second year. It's about finding sustained success. And that's what's eluded the Philadelphia Flyers. And a lot of it comes down to defense and goaltending, which was supposed to be fixed this year. At the very least, the goaltending was supposed to be this beacon of stability. And nope, it hasn't happened. Nashville. Right now, I'll say Nashville fans should be pretty happy with things. They're 4th in the division. They look like they probably get that 4th spot. I know Dallas is in the running, but I don't see Dallas getting it. I know they have the games in hand as well. Dallas has 7 games to finish the season on the road. Nashville's record's been excellent for at least, 5-6 weeks. I don't see that necessarily changing. Dallas has 3 games left against Tampa in Tampa. It's a tough road for the Stars, and for Nashville, they just have to keep it up. And once they get into the playoffs, as we've seen over preceding years, anything can happen. And Nashville plays better as an underdog than they do as a favorite. As an underdog, they seem to be a much better team. I refer back to 2017 when this was Nashville country, apparently. And we'll see if that takes place again. If Nashville being the underdog is exactly what they need to get their mojo back in the playoffs. Next team on the board, the Oilers. Oiler fans have to be happy. Look, you've got Connor McDavid, who is the best player in the NHL. And last season, Leon Draisaitl had an amazing season. It was a fantastic year. But Connor McDavid is the best player in the league. And it's the race for first place in scoring is not close this year. He has a chance of finishing with 100 points, which over 80 games is impressive. Over 82 games is impressive. Over 56 games is absolutely ridiculous. So even if he doesn't get to 100 points, the fact that we're talking about it tells you just how elite he is. And Mike Smith in net has been excellent. Darnell Nurse has taken that next step on the blue line. Tyson Barrie has been exactly the offensive blue liner they've needed. There are a lot of things to like about this Oilers team and to hope that this summer, through free agency, they can keep it all together. It's going to be a challenge, but they're going to try to find a way to do it. And so for the Oilers, I think they should be quite happy. Boston. Boston, I'll put here with Nashville. You know, they've had their ups and downs lately, but post-trade deadline, they've mostly been better than they were pre-trade deadline. Last night's win over Pittsburgh, I think, was an important one because they showed they could score 5-on-5 against Pittsburgh. They showed that they could handle Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh at home has been excellent all season. So there's a lot of reasons to look at Boston right now and say, you know what? This is a team that you might want to watch out for in the first round. If it's against Washington, their playoff record against Washington, you can look that up. It's not necessarily great, especially if it's Tuukka Rask against the Caps in the playoffs. That usually goes the Capitals' way. But we'll see, right? Because Boston this year just feels a little bit different than last year. But again, it's all going to be different this year in the playoffs. Ottawa. I'm going to put Ottawa as very happy. Absolutely. And I'm sorry that logo is bigger, but that was the Sens logo I found of that variety when I used their logo from last year. People, you're using the wrong logo. Fine. So I'll use this one, which technically has Ottawa Senators written in it, rather than the gold leaf design they have now. So technically that's an even older logo, but it's the same similar design. So Ottawa fans have to be happy. The young kids have come up. They've all looked pretty good. We'll see when it's an 82-game schedule next year whether or not that works. They had the really rough start to this season. They need to avoid that next year. And while it's exciting to see a team really turned around after that rough start, it can happen again. We've seen in years past where teams just struggle out of the gate. Or in Buffalo's case, Buffalo's not on the board yet, but Buffalo's problem wasn't starting out of the gate. It was after that 25-game mark, they would just fall right off the map. So that's an issue that Ottawa needs to make sure they start out fast, get off to like a 6-4, 7-3, 6-3-1 kind of start next year, and then they can build on that. And I'm in favor of it because the funny part is I've been a fan of the Ottawa Senators from the very beginning. It's my mother's favorite team, and when they win, I'm always kind of happy for her. So it would be nice to see them for the first time in a while, relevant and playing games that matter late in the season for their playoff hopes. So, Ottawa. Dallas. I'm torn on Dallas. I'll leave them right about in the middle. Notice I haven't got anybody on fire right now. So that's kind of nice, isn't it? It's kind of nice to see that. That there's nobody I have that's enraged and on fire at this point, and only two teams that are sleeping waiting for the draft lottery. But Dallas, I have right in the middle. I don't think they end up making it, but they've had a pretty good second half of the season. And when they're, providing they're healthy in the fall, it'll be interesting to see if they bounce back next year. And I hope they do. I do. There are reasons to be hopeful for the future. Rope Hintz and of course Robertson being two of the main reasons to be excited about their future. But then you've got Klingberg on the blue line with Heiskanen, and in net you've got Ottinger, who's been really good. So whether they do or they don't make it, to me that's not as important as the development of the young guys, which has been pretty good. And then making sure that your veterans are healthy in the fall, like Radulov, like Sagan, providing that Radulov's still with the Stars next year. But yeah, so I've got them in the middle. Again, I don't have them as like overly jubilant because they're probably not going to make it, or overly panicked because they're in the hunt, right? Calgary. So here's the interesting thing with Calgary. You know, I'm tempted. I'm going to leave them right in the middle here. So not like angry, everything's on fire. Although the team's name is Flames, so it would suit the team's name. Not completely at panic, but does it bother anybody in Flames land to know that Sam Bennett, who struggled for years in Calgary, goes to Florida and it just works? And it's not like it's all secondary assists and he's just out there for the fun of it. He is driving the play. He is absolutely driving the play for Florida in a way that Calgary wanted him to, and he never did as a Flame. And again, does this mean that for a guy like, let's say, Johnny Gaudreau, they turn around and they go, you know what? We can't make this work with Johnny Gaudreau. We're going to have to change up the core. Does this mean that if Gaudreau goes somewhere else, he's going to end up tearing up the league, score 100 points, and expose other issues with the Flames? So, yeah, Calgary, I think there's reason to be really concerned when you see guys leaving town and doing really well elsewhere. And that's what we're seeing right now with Sam Bennett. And it was immediate. It was automatic. Just Bennett, a completely different player in Florida. They're getting playoff-level Sam Bennett during the regular season, and they couldn't be happier about it. Next on the board, Carolina. Yeah, Carolina's really happy. Again, we're getting close to the playoffs, so for teams that are doing really well, I don't see any reason to put them any lower on the panic. And they're winning without Tara Vinen for the most part over the last 6 weeks, right? And all of this. And so that they come through these injury problems and they still keep winning. They have injury problems with Mrazek being hurt. And it's worked out pretty well. In fact, Mrazek being hurt is part of the reason Nedeljkovic is going to play enough games that he's a restricted free agent this summer instead of unrestricted. It's kind of all coming up in their favor, and that's the first time I've ever said that about the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina's always been a mediocre, below the playoff line team, and then over the last few years, that's completely and totally changed. Buffalo. Now, Buffalo would have been down here, right? Or over here. Everything's on fire, right? But with the way things are going right now, I'm actually going to put them there. So there's a panic side to this, but with the development of Middlestad, with them playing better under Granato, with them getting some wins here and there, I think it's taken a lot of the sting out of this season. Not completely, absolutely not. Fans aren't happy with the fact that this team's regressed rather than moving forward. But there's reasons to look at this team right now and be optimistic. And so what Kevin Adams does this summer will be interesting to see. And see how things turn out for Buffalo. But yeah, Buffalo, I still have them closer to the panic side, but nowhere near the level of panic they were at, say, 2 months ago. It's nowhere close. Not to me anyways. LA. Well, they can hang out with the other California teams and be right down here in the... Now, they're still technically in the race, so San Jose. So I know fans are going to say we're still in the race. I don't see them catching St. Louis. So for LA, I think it's a looking forward to the draft. And hey, Byfield's making his debut tonight. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about the future for LA, for San Jose, or for LA, for Anaheim, and then San Jose. Once we come out of this year's draft, we can start talking about premier prospects for them as well. So it will get better. It's going to get better for all three California teams, but for right now, it's one of those downtimes. Florida. It is tough not to have Florida up that high as well. It is. Because for Florida, they look like a contender right now, right? They look like a contender. They look like a team that could absolutely win a Stanley Cup for the first time ever. Even in '96, they go to the Stanley Cup final. Nobody saw that coming. And since then, I can't think of a year that they've ever been seen as anything more than maybe middle of the pack. They win their division did they win the division once or twice? Anyways, I know they've been first in their division, but even then it was, we don't see them as a cup contender though. This year things just feel different. They're very fast. There's a lot of depth. Their defense is really solid. Remember, they lost Ekblad. Have they been without Ekblad? Pretty good. So this is a team that's shown they can absorb all these injuries, whether it was Hornquist that was out, Barkov being out. They can absorb these injuries. And so, yeah, things are pretty good in Florida, and people are rightfully very excited. New Jersey. Uh, New Jersey, I think, I'm not going to have them as panicked as Columbus, but there's some reasons to be concerned with New Jersey. Now, they do have an excellent young roster, and it's a very young roster. But this rebuild feels like it's taking a long time. And so, do they come out of it next year? I don't know. We'll see what they do this summer. So while they're having negotiations with Tom Fitzgerald about extending his contract as GM, right now the jury's out on how things are going to go for them going forward. The deal for Palmieri and Zajac, they could end up winning that if they end up bringing one or the other back. But either way, I think it was a move that had to be made. And for New Jersey, if they draft first and they get a really good defenseman out of this year's draft, I think they'll be pretty happy. Or if they end up drafting later and they draft Luke Hughes. I think either Vancouver or New Jersey having two of the Hughes brothers would be really, really fun. Rangers fans, pretty excited. I would think pretty happy. Even if this team misses the playoffs, they've won over their fan base. I think their fans have to be excited about where this team is headed. And I've found them very enjoyable to watch. The New York Rangers right now have again become what they were last year. Last year, they were a lot of fun to watch. And it's getting more and more fun to watch them again. And a lot of it has to do with that Zibanejad line is on fire again. Panarin's playing great. Fox is playing great. And Lafreniere is starting to look more and more like the guy they drafted first last year in the draft. Detroit. Well, Detroit's here. I mean, Detroit is just, waiting on another draft lottery. But Detroit fans also pretty excited about the future and feeling pretty good about how the kids are playing. That's really all I have to add with them. There's not really much else to say. Islanders, right now, I'm going to have the Islanders down here with Nashville and Boston. The Islanders, those 3 games against Washington, have to leave you thinking that they're a level below the Caps. And then you look at the Penguins' record, maybe they're a level below the Penguins as well. And ideas of maybe that run they had last year is this good run, and maybe this year they're not going to have that again. Scoring issues and just overall probably not looking as good as last year. Not that anybody predicted what they do last year either. And with Barry Trotz, it's possible they do it again. But so I've got the Islanders there and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh fans amongst the most excited in the league for where their team is at and where their team is headed. This is standard going into the playoffs. Last year going into the playoffs, Pittsburgh had a really good record. And then we had the break. And we had the return, and then they lose. And so there has to be some thought of how do we prevent that from happening again. The one thing that they have going for them, going into this year's playoffs they didn't have last year, is familiarity and no time off. So whoever they play in that first round is a team they're going to know very, very well. It's not like it's going to be 7 months in between the games they play, right? Or 5 months in between the games they play. And so there's a better chance that we'll see fewer upsets this year from that perspective. And I say that although the familiarity can sometimes help the underdogs. So we'll see. All right, there you go. Your Panik Index for April 28th of 2021. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. And hey, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Seems to be a lot of the subscriber numbers kind of blew up the last couple of days, although there was something I think going on the YouTube side that they had to fix, so maybe there were some that weren't showing up. So I don't know that means it was unsubscribing people or if they just weren't showing as subscribed on my side, but it's one of those things. But thank you guys so much for those who are subscribed, and hey, I will talk to you again soon.